again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Remy, and for this introduction, and for having me here to present the activities of the Open Metering System Group. As Remy said, my name is Axel Sikora. I'm also serving, apart from my life at university in OMS-Group, being member of the executive board of OMS-Group and also being spokesman of the Task Force Security. And it's my pleasure now to present activities of OMS in general, just to present what is behind, and then of course also talk about the liaison and the collaboration with LoRa Alliance, which I believe is very, very fruitful and important, and for me also comes with a kind of model character. Okay, so I structured my presentation into 5 chapters. First, a very short glance about smart metering, even though I believe this is not so much necessary after the previous panel discussion. Give you a short overview into the OMS specification as such, with also the short background into the history and outlook. Then have a more general short chapter showing how, from my perspective, protocol stacks changed or will change. So I believe we are currently at a changing point, a turning point from monolithic stacks to more modular, interoperable stacks. And then one of these directions certainly would be OMS over LPWAN technologies. And of course, summary and outlook. So smart metering. For me, if I see real numbers, smart metering is one of the first really happening large-scale IoT applications. Of course, there are many more, but if we look into real numbers, sales numbers, which are around for these years, smart metering is top-notch. And in that case, OMS is understood, or is to be understood as multimedia in terms of, well, it's not concentrating on water metering or gas metering or electricity metering, but it covers all media. Nevertheless, water plays a major role in these days, but the other media, the other energy types are increasingly important. The OMS-Group is now 17 years old. The activity started back in 2007 and concentrated on the primary communication between the smart meter and a smart meter gateway. Not necessarily the secure smart meter gateway in a German understanding, but generally from the meter to the gateway. Originally, it started off from a wired M-bus, but then was extended with a wireless option. The local bus, the local metering bus is still very popular when it comes to multi-apartment housing or also quarter management, but of course the music plays in the wireless world. Per definition, it's secure. There are extensive security measures in the stack, and different security options also, so that you can pick and choose. It's media independent, it's also vendor independent. So what I see and what I hear from our partners, the media manufacturers, is that basically all tenders, at least in Central Europe, maybe even also in the Middle East, North Africa region, are calling for the OMS, for the interoperability. And I'll come back to this in a second. If you zoom in into such a standard, you find many sub-standards, and I would like to guide you a little bit through what they did. I joined something around 2010, 2011. So there are basically 8 different parts of the standard, which is under the umbrella of the EN 13757. The data exchange is such, then the description of the wired M-bus. Very important part 3, the application protocols, and I will come back to this later, because for me this is one of the major ingredients where this collaboration makes most sense, because if we are talking about unified and standardized application layer, then this is about the system integration into the backend system. And for this integration, maybe the RF part is not so much important, but it's important to have the data points and to do all the management around the meters. So for me, part 3 is especially important. Then we have part 4 and part 5, which are dealing with the wireless communication, part 7 with the mostly security services, and then an adaptation layer, which especially is relevant for the security integration. So all in all, the legacy OMS stack concentrates on what is shown here in red. That means a unified application layer, a data link layer, transport layer, potentially also with security extensions, and then an own physical layer which basically uses or can use any legacy wireless transceiver 868 mostly. And in that sense, OMS has been also tidying up many of the distributed descriptions and unified it. Also, to be honest, the wired M-bus or the M-bus specification in the very beginning was not very clean, let me put it like this, and OMS did a good work to really keep out some of those descriptions which didn't make sense, which were not clean, which didn't lead to a clean architecture and so on. So OMS is a cleaned up version of M-bus, you could say. And this cleanup has been executed over 4 generations in total. First generation back in 2008 covers the minimum requirements for wired and wireless meters, covers all layers as we have seen, including also the encryption, and describes the values to be transmitted. Then in the second version, which came shortly afterwards, also the rules for bidirectional meters were issued. Also use of repeaters due to a limited range, of course, of the standard wireless M-bus was included, and also from there on, very importantly, a certification process for the complete stack from physical layer up to application layer was issued. Version 3 then introduced synchronous transmission to also support battery operated bidirectional repeaters, and introduced also new CI fields, that means new application fields for the meters. Now version 4 included new security measures. As you might be aware, especially in Germany with the BSI specifications, we have specific rules for the secure smart meter gateway, and these options were included here, with also the nice aspect that there is no own specification of the BSI, but just a pointer to, if you want to use a secure primary communication protocol, look for OMS. So there's no own specification as such, but just the pointer to OMS. And again, and this is what I always do if I zoom in. Now let's zoom in into the version 4. Then there are different versions from 4.1 to 4.5. Some small updates in 4.1, encryption requirements, address handling, version 4.2, with some smaller updates, and also a security profile C, which then is TLS being integrated here, version 4.3, which comes with 2 additional annexes, Annex M for additional optional bidirectional use cases, and Annex P for the wired M-bus, then 4.4, which integrates also, and this also might be an interesting use case, additional sensors. So beyond the smart metering, also smoke detectors and so on, because in many countries, the operators for the smart smoke detectors are the same operators which also look after the smart meters, and therefore it makes sense to get this integrated into the smart metering infrastructure. And then version 4.5, which included OMS end device, including meters, sensors, and actuators, and also, again, did some cleanup. All in all, OMS is concentrating on the smart metering world, and therefore, obviously, it's also not as big as LoRa Alliance. Nevertheless, had 71 members as of January. We went up by 3 new members this year, but obviously very much specialized. The structure of the OMS looks as follows very democratic. So there's a general meeting, general assembly of all members, and then from there is an executive board where I'm a member, but also several work groups, AGs, Arbeitsgruppen, German abbreviation. AG1 might be the most important one because it concentrates on the primary communication. And I already mentioned that there are other task forces, including the task for security, that I'm responsible for. But we also see there, you don't see the, but there's also the task force OMS over third-party networks, which is the relevant part here. We have a AG3 looking after the conformance testing, AG4 looking after wired members, AG5 for marketing. And as you see on the right side, there are different liaisons that are established over time with different entities. Of course, with regard to the standardization with CEN-CENELEC, where also the EN norms are ratified. There's a liaison with DLMS as larger scale meters, and first liaison with third-party networks was established back in February 21 with LoRa Alliance. But let me also mention that there's another one with IIoT Alliance, and therefore from an OMS point of view, we talk about OMS over LPWAN and not specifically over LoRaWAN. And why we do this, I would shortly try to explain from this chapter here. Just looking beyond smart metering and beyond LoRaWAN and anything. What we see, or what we saw for many, many years, were monolithic stacks. I mean, all following the layered approach, layer 1 to layer 7, but with the possibility to only use them all together. So if you looked into a ZigBee stack, you had to use this physical layer, you had to use this back layer, you have to use this network layer up to the application profiles. Same holds true for Bluetooth, yeah, still today. If you are using Bluetooth, go for this physical layer and go for the gut application attributes included in Bluetooth. Or for other examples in the industrial world, just as one example, can open. However, what we saw for the last years, and I believe this will be an ongoing and even more intense trend, is that this monolithic approach is increasingly resolved or dissolved. Yeah, look at ZigBee. What they now have is a meta application layer, just using the profiles and then mapping it to the different transport layers, be it Wi-Fi, be it Bluetooth, be it Thread. If you look into the CAN-Open world, take the CAN-Open profiles and map it not only to CAN, but also to Ethernet protocols and so on. So, split application layer protocols and transport layer protocols. And in the end, what this trend of OMS over LPWAN is pointing to is exactly that. Taking the OMS application layer and mapping it to multiple transport layers. This was a journey we started already a couple of years ago, as was already mentioned. In 21, the first demonstrators were shown at NLIT, and then in 22, this also was integrated into the 13757 standard. And then in the last year, a new demo was shown at the LoRa Alliance booth. So that in the end, we also see, sorry for a few German words there, this is an old version, but saying yes, the OMS over LPWAN goes here as one of the options in that. And I believe this is, yeah, as I said, a quite natural development. Nevertheless, I'm very happy to also see this openness for this integration, so that it's a much better mix and match on one side, and a much easier integration for the backend integration. Because again, let me repeat, the application layer remains identical. That means for the integration into all the accounting systems and so on, it is not important which physical layer is used here, but this is the upper part. And of course, especially the integration of LoRaWAN is one of the major contenders. Let me also mention that some of the LPWAN PHYs are also added into the OMS version 5. That means not only using the third-party networks, but also integrating additional modulation schemes, and this is in the version 5 as an additional option. So one more option to pick and choose. So, and in the end, here I can also show the true dream of everybody, I believe, is that it's not only pick and choose, but also to dynamically switch. That means multi-stack codes or multi-stack implementations are around where you could switch from legacy wireless M-bus to the LoRaWAN integration, be it at compile time, be it at runtime even, and giving full flexibility also for the complete life cycle. One issue which we are currently working on, this is not finalized yet, is the testing on the certification, because up to now, the certification of the OMS stack was always done layer 1 to layer 7. It does not make sense to make an additional LoRaWAN certification if there is already a good LoRaWAN implementation. So the certification process from OMS side will be adapted, saying, well, it only, or there will be one test part of the lower layers and another test part for the higher layers. So, summary and outlook. I believe from a general point of view, modular protocol stack definitions shall be flexible, efficient, and future-proof. I believe in this dream of unified and standardized application layers, and OMS, LPWAN, OMS over LoRaWAN is exactly pointing into this direction. So thank you very much, and I believe we have even one more minute for questions. Thank you.